Alright, in the last video I talked about the zigzag opening and what happens if red builds up the second column and how white can win by either playing 4 or 7. Today I'm going to talk about what happens if red doesn't build up the second column right away. I'm going to talk about what happens if red plays 4 right away. We've already shown in the last video why this cell is important for a white to win. So what happens if red takes the cell? Well, here white has several possible ways to win. First of all, he can do the usual move, which I've talked about in the first 2 videos. He can play 7 and kill red's possible even on the right side. And this is a common move. More commonly, people play 2 here to get 2 on the 3rd row. And the third move that can win is to play 5 and make 2 on the 5th row. First I'm going to go over what happens if white takes 7. This seems like a versatile move because it seems to force red to play on top, while at the same time preventing red from making an easy even on the right side. However, for red to play on top here would be a weak move, because if red simply plays on top, then white has many ways to win. For example, he could simply play on 2 and build up the left side and make a similar threat on both sides of the board as we've seen in the previous video. Perhaps a better move for red to play here would be 2, because by playing 2, red also sets up a possible counter odd on the left side. For example, if white were to play 7 here and fall into the trap, red could play 2, make a counter odd on the left side, and this would actually end up being a win for red, as we've talked about before in the case of 1 odd against 1 odd. And with red having 2 on an even row, he will win in the end game. For example, say the game continues something like this, and eventually, now white has no choice but to give up his odd here. So say he gives up his odd, and then red simply gives up his own odd and makes an even here to win. So white's not going to make an odd here because it would be too early. Instead, white is better off either playing 2 to build on top, or he could play 5 to prevent red from making this odd, because if red makes this odd, then white makes his own odd on the left. And if white plays 5, then red would have no choice but to block this odd, since this threat no longer becomes possible. And now white has to find ways to win on either the left or the right side. It's hard for him to win on the left side because, well, he doesn't have any more even supporting chance to win. For example, he could try and play something like 6 and make an even here to support an odd over here, but then red plays 3 down here, makes an even on the right side, and we can show that this is actually going to end up being a second player win. For example, say white tries to make red run out of moves. He can play like 5, and red plays a waiting move like 6, and we can see eventually that white will run out of options. If white eventually he'll have to play on this move, and then red will gain a tempo by playing 2, in which white has to block, and if white tries to make an odd here, red simply blocks it. And we can see that this even will be enough to win. So white can't make an odd on the left side by making this even. So that means to solve that problem, he should play 3 first to ensure that red can't make any possible threats on the right side. It's always a good idea if you don't have any moves that can easily make you win, that you can block the other player's possible threats so that you can keep your options open while at the same time not sacrificing any of your own possibilities. So in this case, white plays 3 and now red has several things to worry about. Obviously, he has to worry about this odd over here because, for example, white would be able to make an odd, and if he plays here, then white can do what we described earlier, play 6, makes an even down here, and that will be enough to make an odd on the third row because red no longer has any threats. For example, if red now plays this, white comes down here, red comes down here, white comes down here, red blocks, and you can see that white has already made a threat on the right side here, but at the same time red no longer has a lower threat on the right, so we can clearly see that this would be a white win. Alternatively, he could simply block here, and white should not fall into the trap of making an odd right away because then red should also be careful not to fall into a trap of making a counter odd here because white builds up the vertical, red blocks, now white has 2 odds, and red's not going to block both of them, right? He still has an odd over here. Yeah, red shouldn't play this. He should instead play on 3, gain a tempo because it also forces the threat. White plays here, and red, of course, plays here to prevent an immediate win. And now, as you can see, red can make an odd on either by playing 2 or by playing 6, and there's no way for red to block both. No way for white to block both of them, so red makes an odd here now, and becomes a draw. What else? Yes, instead of having white make an odd right away, he should make sure that red can't make any counter odds. For example, white could gain a tempo by playing 7. If red plays 6, then white can play 6, blocks, and even though red has an odd here, it's not going to be enough because eventually he's going to have to get rid of this, but as you can see, white has an even down here that will support him to make an odd on the left side. For example, plays here, white plays here. Doesn't really matter what the rest of the moves are. Plays like this. Red eventually has to give up his own odd. Or he plays over here and then that loses. Or he plays here and then white makes an odd on the left. What else am I going to say? Right. Another move to win. After 4. White can simply play on the 2 on the 5th row. Try and keep options on both sides. Red has 2 good ante moves here. Could play 7, try and take the right side immediately. White, therefore, would have to work on the left side, and eventually he may have to build up to c4 to kill this even. White would have to play 2, and red can't play 2 here because white makes the odd. So red is probably best chance just to block the even here. You play 5, but white has many ways to win here. For example, he could simply just do what I said earlier and try and build up this column. Red would just have no other choice but to stall. Block. No, white can't build it up right away because of this. But if white plays here, now red's suddenly out of moves because in order to bring the move back to white, red would have to build this up. But as soon as he builds this up, then white gets the vertical on the left. Oh, sorry, gets the odd on the left side. So this would be a clear spot for white to win. Alternate move. You could try and play. You could try and play 2, and then white right now has nothing on the left side, so he should do no better than to block this even down here. Play 7. Red has no choice but to play 7 on top since he can't make this because of this. So he plays 7. And since white still has nothing to do on the left side, he should do, in a similar pattern as to earlier, he should block the even down here by playing 3. Red would probably play 6, that's the best move. And this would become in a very similar position than what we saw earlier. And as we can see that white can simply win in the same way. Another possible move to win in this spot, white could simply play 3 right away, and then red plays on top, doesn't really have much else to do. Then white would either play here or here. If he plays here, it's pretty similar to what we talked about earlier. If he plays here, red blocks. White again has to stop this even on the right, so he plays down. Red plays on top, or he plays this. But in the end, white can very easily win with many possibilities. For example, white plays down here, red plays here, white blocks the top row of threats. Red plays down here, and has nothing else to play. White plays down here, and red's really running out of moves here. He plays 6. White plays down here, but now, as you can see, red's out of moves. For example, if he plays on 6, make a threat, white makes another threat, block, block. Red has to block this diagonal because this can make an on the left. If he plays here, then white simply plays here. And now white wins with the clever double attack at the end thanks to the even down here. For example, if he builds up here, which is his only move, red has no choice but to block. Red blocks, white blocks, red blocks, white blocks again. There's a double threat on the top, and white wins. Right. So that was the anti-move 4 in this opening. A similar anti-move would be to play 6. It's kind of similar. White, again, has many possible ways to win. I can't really cover all of them. Could cover some of the more common ones. I can cover, for example, white may just play here, red plays up, and then white takes 4, keep both sides open. Red makes an even down here because he has no other move. And then white has ways to put threats on both sides. White plays down here, white plays on top. Block, block. White plays down on 6 in order to stop the odd on the left side. Red is just about to run out of moves. He could try to play, something just to wait it out. White plays down here, red plays down here. Now white plays down here. If white plays down here, he gets a double threat on this diagonal and this horizontal. Red can't stop both of them. If red doesn't play here, then his only other move is to play over here, and then white simply plays over here. Again, white's threatening a diagonal over here, and red can't stop him. If your red plays here, he just simply makes this diagonal. So yeah, that would be a pretty easy win. Another common move is 2, because people like making 2 on the 3rd row. Red plays on top. Red makes this odd over here because it's important in preventing white from building up to the 3rd row. For example, if white tries to make an even here, white wants to make an even here so he can build up to C3, but he can't build up to C3 because red has an odd underneath, so that's why the odd is important. Red blocks on 5 on the top right, and white once again has no better move than to stop on the right side, build on the right side. He plays down here, red plays down, and in a similar fashion as before, white has to play down here. And eventually red will run out of moves. For example, he tries to he plays 4, white just blocks, 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 and then red would be in Zugzwang again. He plays here, white plays here, and then once again we see this diagonal that will eventually cut red to make the odd. It'll be a similar situation to what we saw earlier, basically, and white will win again with the double threat. One last move. White might just decide to play 7 right away. That's a good move. Puts pressure on this cell right away. Red can build on 2. As I said, white can't play here because of this. Would win for red. So white just plays on top, red plays on top. And now, it's a little tricky spot. A lot of people might play 5 here, or they might play 7. If they play 7, red actually has a tricky draw by playing 4. The reason this is a draw is because this this d4, e3, this diagonal will eventually cut this odd in the endgame. But red plays 4 because he doesn't want white to take these diagonals, because then white may be able to make threat on the left side. So red takes this top. White obviously plays down here to block possible counter odd and double threats. And then, as long as red doesn't do anything crazy, let's say he plays here, then this ends up being a draw, because now white's run out of moves. He either gives up his odd or he plays up here. Red goes down. It cuts the odd down here. And that's a draw. So he doesn't play that. Whoops. Yeah, this ends up being a draw. So white, instead of playing that, should play on 4 to ensure that he can work on both sides of the board. Similarly, if he plays, say, 3, try and make an odd this way, red can again play on 4, and if white plays here, red plays here. This is similar to what we talked about before. Red makes the counter odd. None of this doesn't matter. Even if he has 2 threats, still odd against odd. Not much you can do. If white tries to keep his options open, if he plays 6, then red just takes up here. He still gets the odd either way, so that doesn't work. So white has to play 4. After white plays 4, red has no other trick up his sleeve, so he's got to play on 7. If red tries to make a counter odd, say by playing maybe 2, white makes one down here, red blocks, white blocks. Because if white gets this diagonal, he's eventually going to win. Yeah. You can see here, red is zugzwang because of this odd, prevents him from building up this column and giving the move back to white. So he either has to play here or play here, and that will give him up on. You'll give white a diagonal on the left side. That's why this diagonal is important and this cell is important. So red has to play here. White blocks it even, similar to what we talked about before. Red blocks possible attacks on the right side. White can make an odd up here. If red makes an odd, white just builds up, makes odd on both sides. Red can't block everything, so red wins. Or sorry, red loses. So yeah, that's basically the most of the variations for this and this. One more video on this opening, I will talk about this move, which is also a pretty strong anti-move. So yeah, thanks for watching.